Welcome to the Blueprint in Practice, the video series where I show exactly how I implement the blueprint in real life. And the blueprint is probably the simplest approach to getting jacked, strong, and fit on the internet. It's how I build my physique, a good amount of strength, and elite level cardiovascular fitness, training under 1 hour a week with only 3 exercises, and having cooked down the nutritional side to 3 simple rules to follow as well. The blueprint is in the description and it's free to read through if you're interested. So, I've been injured for around a week now and I haven't been able to do much. I tried training like 2 days into the injury, but my elbow began flaring up. And apparently my right elbow, so golfer's elbow I suppose, it's like the inside of my elbow hurts. My right elbow also began hurting. So that's just, annoying, double up. But yesterday, or the training you see in the background, was my first training after a week of taking off the gym. And it was good. So the elbow didn't hurt, it didn't flare up, nothing happened. Obviously, as you see in the background, I didn't train with weight. And in general, like when you come back into training after having taken some time off, that could be a week, 2 weeks, a month, the longer, the lighter you have to go into your training. And that's really what you want to do. So you want to sort of start out slowly and then get back into it. But if it's just a week, like I just start out with 1 light session to begin with, and then you can go straight back into your training. So I dropped down the weight a little bit on the weight vest to around 15 kilos or 35 pounds, I believe, from the 17 kilos before. And that's just, I maybe didn't have to do that, but intensity, so like the weight at which you train with, so the heavier the load on the weight you're training with, like the greater the likelihood of injury. That's also why I believe power lifters, so people who specifically train for to lift the maximum amount of weight on the bench press, squat, and deadlift, they're injured like at 4 or 5 times the rate as bodybuilders who train, in more moderate rep ranges with more moderate loads. So it's just that's just another reason to train in the 5 to 15 rep range instead of, doing singles, doubles, or triples as powerlifters do. So you just decrease your likelihood of injury quite dramatically. And that's one of the reasons I got injured. But apart from that, it's just because I've been training to failure. So I've just been training too intensely for too long. And this is not going to happen overnight, guys. Like if you're a total beginner, yeah, if you go into training and just, do 10 sets every single day, don't recover, don't sleep at night, yes, you are going to get injured. But this little injury, which is gone now mostly, is caused by me having done this for months and years, okay? So it's just me having been stupid. I've been training too intensely, and that's what I'm going to change moving forward, because I don't train that much. Like I don't do that much volume. So it can't be that, which is one of the big factors. I did train quite heavily, which is another factor that can increase your likelihood of injury. But apart from that, it was just too intense. Like I went too close to failure. Like those last reps where I sometimes didn't even make it, where I just got half a rep, for example. I blame that mostly on my injury, because I can't really see anything else. Because even when you're training, like, you're doing 5 reps in your first set and 4 reps second set, 3 reps second set, and the chin up. That's obviously where I got injured, right? The chin up. Like that is not, it is heavy, but it's not super heavy. Like you're not down doing doubles or singles or something. And it's not like you're staying there for that long either. Like over time, over the weeks and months, you should be able to do more reps. And then all of a sudden you're doing maybe 7, 6, 5 reps and then more later on, right? So it can't be that either. So I think I'll just stay 1 rep shy of failure moving forward, which means that, or 1 or 2 rep shy of failure, instead of always aiming for total failure. Doing that, you just decrease the amount of fatigue you'll accumulate over time. So you'll recover better from your training. You won't push your joints and stuff that hard. you will make the same gains, probably even better gains for strength because you're better recovered. And the same for hypertrophy, the research shows at the moment. So going to total failure is not better for almost anything than staying 1 or 2 rep shaft failure, which is what I believed in the past, but that turns out to be wrong. And that's really an important thing to accept, is that like what a lot of what we know today will turn out to be wrong in the future. So it's important to be flexible there and be able to admit when you were wrong. So you shouldn't train as hard as possible all the time. Then you'll increase your chances of injury, amongst other things. And for most people, that's too difficult to adhere to because it's too intense for too long. So staying 1 or 2 rep shy of failure is just a more sustainable way to train in all measures, and it'll give you the same, if not better, results on the hypertrophy and strength sides. And you train to 1 or 2 rep shy of failure by stopping the exercise you're doing when the speed at which you do the exercise slows down dramatically. So in other words, when you're doing the chin up and like the rep you're doing slows down quite considerably at the top, stop. At that point, you could probably do 1 or 2 reps more. So 1 rep more and then half a rep more. It's the total failure. But that's what you want to avoid, you see. So stop when the speed at which you do the exercise slows down dramatically. And that also applies to the push-ups and squats. And also to any other exercise you would be doing maybe. Especially if they're like multi-joint compound movements where you're like where multiple joints and muscle groups are involved, you see. And I think that's sort of it for the training. So today, I'm filming the audio for this video the day after the workout. I am just going to train as normal and see how that goes. And hopefully, my elbow doesn't flare up again. If it does, like if it just becomes terrible, I might have to take even more time off. Or maybe start doing pull-ups instead of chin-ups or something. And that's really where variety in your training comes in. Like, in the past, I've also preached that you should just keep it super simple if you want to, and the stuff like overuse injuries, which is what I've gotten, isn't triggered specifically by not varying your training. That's also still true. So overuse injuries are caused by you training too intensely, like you put too much stress on a single point, in this case my elbow, for too long, you see. And varying your training does help here, but it doesn't fix the problem, and it doesn't cause the problem. So in other words, I could continue doing chin-ups, and I could have avoided this injury doing chin-ups if I just didn't train as intensely, you see. But if I vary like if I do pull-ups, for example, the elbow doesn't hurt as much because, you're doing the movement slightly differently. So that's sort of like a way you can spread out the stress over time, I guess. But if you begin varying your training too much or doing too many different variations of chin-ups, pull-ups, or whatever, then it's just harder to track your progress, I think. So in other words, I'm probably stronger on like chin-ups than I am on pull-ups. And then all of a sudden I have to adjust the load or what? I'm not doing that. That's just, then it ruins the training for me because then it's too complicated all of a sudden. If I have to take weight off the weight vest every time I have to train, I'm not doing that. So I'm just going back to doing chin-ups and then hoping that it won't flare up again by training less intensely moving forward. And I think that's sort of the updates for the training. Oh, so I also stopped doing scapular push-ups. So if you watched my videos for some time, you know that I did scapular push-ups to try to fix my scapular winging, which is where your shoulder blades sort of wing out. I've always had a bit of scapular winging. So does my parents. So do most people, actually. And I think it's normal. I don't think I can improve mine much more by training my serratus anterior. But if it's super bad for you, like doing that one exercise will help a lot. But it won't make it perfect, I doubt. And that's where I am at. So I don't have a lot of scapular winging. Like most people wouldn't even notice it. I have a little bit, which is quite a little annoying. But yeah, I can't be bothered to do that exercise anymore. It also complicates the training. So to hell with it, man. So I stopped doing that as well. For nutrition, I've began is switching things up a little bit. So I'm still eating the same stuff more or less, but instead of rice, I'm now eating pasta, and instead of scrambling my eggs, I'm boiling them. That's just to switch it up a little bit. So I'm basically eating the same stuff. I mean, rice and pasta, if you equate it for volume, contains the same calories more or less. The same applies to bread. So like you can switch those up. So one pasta contains more calories than one rice. So it's but rice is denser. So in other words, in 1 cubic centimeter or inch of rice, there's more rice than there is in a cubic centimeter of pasta typically. So like the two just equates themselves in terms of calories more or less. So I just eat the same amount of pasta now that I did rice in the past, and that's sort of how I do it. And then I'll just boil the eggs instead of scrambling them, just to switch it up a little bit. And again, it's more or less the same food I'm eating, but just this slight change in nutrition has just spiced it up a little bit, you see. So that's something you can do. You can also choose to eat one thing one day, another thing the other day. That's up to you, obviously. But yeah. So I think that's sort of the updates for now. Yeah. So I'm hoping that my training moving forward will just be smooth as it was in the past. So I won't be stopped in my progression. But if you liked the video, you can like and subscribe. And you can also, if you have any questions regarding anything I've talked about, anything I've talked about in the past, you can comment down below and I'll be happy to answer your question. So thank you very much for watching and have a good day.